Started. Okay. Hello or hola. My name is Estefany Gonzalez, and today I will be talking about my work, my ideas and influences behind my work as well. So, my medium of choice is predominantly performance. I also work in other mediums, and they are painting and installation, but I mostly focus on performance by means of creating videos and live performances with an audience whenever I get the opportunity to do so. I'm interested in a variety of concepts that focus but are not limited to identity, religion, science, politics, and writing. I like to say that I'm not particularly focused on one of these concepts, but I have found out that looking back on my works I've made within the past year or so, I have discovered that there's one major underlying theme that has been hidden beneath the previously stated topics and are or these concepts. And I find that my work in relation to science, religion, politics, etc., has always been a reflection of myself and what surrounds me at the particular moment of creating the particular piece of work. This makes my work extremely intuitive, and it's always a reflection of the current culture and ideas that surround and affect me. So, like my work, it's constantly changing and it's constantly exploring and it's constantly seeking to find a voice. So, finding my voice has and continues to be this personal journey. And one of the greatest challenges about being an artist for myself, and I'm sure others can relate, is accepting that in this field there is no separation between my work and my personal or social life. It really does intersect. They all intersect, and it becomes this whole. And I can't really talk about my work without talking about my growing up and my past. And we'll get to the work eventually, but just bear with me for a second. Growing up, I really struggled psychologically with coming to terms of who I was. I grew up in a predominantly Anglo community, and I attended a school that made me the minority. I had many, many battles with myself where these two sides of me seemed to develop, and they are a crucial part of the dual personality that tends to contradict itself. And this mere contradiction has sort of become a parallel, and those parallels themselves tend to come through in a majority of my work. So then, with that being said, growing up partially in the States and in Mexico, I am from Mexico originally. I didn't really have a reference as what a Mexican American should look like. And I really fed into this idea of what a Mexican American should look like, how I should act. And I didn't really know how to look or act the part. So it was then really easy for me to separate myself from who I wanted to be and who I allowed myself to be. Thinking back and really reflecting on this, culture and media do have a big influence, and they tell a lot of young people how they should look, what they should wear, what they should be listening to. And when I grew up, I really fed into that sort of media where I was looking at magazines, reality TV, celebrities, and models. And it wasn't until I got to college that these contradictions and really started to present themselves, and I had to face them. And so I began my journey of self-discovery, as exciting as that sounds. uh, the work that I've made within the past 2 years is a reflection of the biggest progress that I've made both academically and personally as a result of a class titled Race and Representation. I became really aware and really intrigued by stereotypes, and I could really personally relate to this, especially within the art community, and stereotypes and the way that cultures create and perpetuate those particular stereotypes. I took this opportunity to create dun dun dun, Lolita. So Lolita became this type of alter ego in a sense where she was a reflection of a Latina stereotype in relation to the Midwest. I was really trying to tie my growing up in Mexico and the Midwest together, and that's sort of where the corn comes into play. When I think about the Chola image and in relation to Lolita, she became this satirical cliche due to my own personal understanding of what a Mexican female should look like. And growing up, I was aware of the Chola image, but I had associated that image to a negative culture. And I grew up with girls that proceeded to dress the part of a chola or look like a chola, but it was a very, very toned down version. So, for that purpose, Lolita is this very robust, exaggerated image of the chola. And she really became an extension of myself and what I like to call my Mexicana-ness. She allowed me to really feel comfortable in my skin, and it, this image really helped me be direct with the perpetuation of stereotypes and how they affected and interacted with other people. Upon creating Lolita, I also created Lolita of Guadalupe. And this image, after creating it, I began to pull out different interpretations and how complex the image, like myself, can present itself to be. Lolita Guadalupe lends itself to ideas of course, religion, identity, race, and politics. And I knew right away when the image was created that I could potentially create some very strong reactions, both positive and negative. And this was attested by my very own mother, where I can still remember what she said to me after catching a glance of the image. She said to me in a very, very stern voice, she said, "Don't mess with my Virgen," with my Virgin. And I felt right then that this really could step on some people's toes. And after I kind of let it sink in, I was really content about the image, because it's a very prominent image in the culture that I come from. And I knew that I could continue to work with Lolita and use her as a way to be very explicit and be very, very direct with the context. So as time went by, I kept continuing working with her. I put her on the streets to clean. So as time went by, I explored and I played with other ideas such as science and time and the constructs of time and images of nature. And I experimented with creating performances in different settings, really focusing on that space. It wasn't until recently that my work took a completely different turn, and very much like my personality, it has seemed to fulfill this balance between these two ideas in relation to Lolita and identity, and now the work that I'm creating is the complete opposite. So it really has created this balance. With that being said, this was and continues to be the underlying theme of my work as a whole. So I think that by now it's safe to say that a major theme in my work lends itself to identity politics. With Raw and other works like it, or other works that sort of led up to the finalized piece, which is Raw, I found that conceptually I'm presenting my ideas in a completely different way. The work here becomes abstract in comparison to Lolita, that is very direct. And I'm obsessed with the hands. And here, with the works that I'm doing, I'm really building basic building blocks of any piece of art and or music, really focusing on color, texture, sound, focal point, and light. With the work that I'm creating now, I find that I'm becoming extremely challenged, and that friction that I've built up against myself that has been a part of me is what is coming out in these pieces. I'm interested in the image that's being created in relationship to proximity and how close the camera is to that body. It becomes personal. And as an artist, I'm really inviting you to experience these moments as they're happening, to really feel them, to be a part of them, to really, really, really try and get an emotional connection with the audience. So it starts to, it's exciting for me. And I find that this is the type of work that's really beginning to translate as more as of an abstract image, and how identity can be abstract at face value. I think of when you first meet a person, or when you're barely starting to to know a person, how much of a person do you really get to know upon meeting them? Because for all you know, when you meet that person is a face and perhaps a voice that you can connect later, run into them. So then my work really begins to ask, what's behind it all? What's behind this face value? And who is this person really? Because for what they may appear to be, it could be just a mere abstract image of who they really are. So I think that my work really begins to ask these questions of who we really are, what really triggers an emotional response, or what are our demons, what's really bothering us inside. How do we present ourselves, and how do we build relationships by concealing our truth? What becomes abstract at face value? So with that, I'm really starting to make all these different ties, and I feel like my work is really starting to take on a bigger meaning in relation to humanity and these challenges of ideas of our species as a whole in relation to the human condition, by means of our relationships that we build with others, how we interact with others, and how we build relationships, but also how do we build relationships with ourselves. And I know that's a lot to take in, so I'm going to leave it at that, because at this point my work is still being pursued, it's still being explored. And so in conclusion, I really hope to continue with this idea, to keep exploring the bigger themes that tie back into the self and the personal and identity politics, and see how I can tie them to our society as a whole. And we'll see. I'm excited to see what happens, and I'll continue to work and explore this idea. So thank you.